2004, André 3000 was the most famous rapper in America. Today, he's a monk, hiding from the world for 20 years. But still, people are just as interested in him as they ever were. André 3000 actually escaped the curse that destroys most rappers, the curse of falling off. But the price for that was a curse of his own.
There have been times where I was like, I've prayed to a God that I didn't even know it existed, really. I would rather you take this away from me. All of this, if I could just feel normal, like take voice, career, all of it, you can have it. If I could feel normal.
I love the way you talk about André 3000 as if he were a person that you knew.
Well, I know him sometime.
But despite his struggles, he's still one of the most beloved and respected rappers ever. That's why the Outkast album Speakerboxx / The Love Below is the best-selling rap album ever, over 13 times platinum. That's why Outkast won 6 Grammy Awards. That's why every single Outkast album is a classic, whether it's full of experimental deep cuts or timeless #1 pop hits. Without André 3000, artists like Kanye, Tyler the Creator, Future, Childish Gambino, or even Kendrick Lamar might not sound the way they do today. So why does this guy, who's basically a saint in the history of hip-hop, say stuff like this?
I haven't been making much music, man. My focus is not there. My confidence is not there. Sometimes it feels inauthentic for me to rap.
What happened to André 3000? This video is brought to you by Nebula, the only place where you can watch my original documentary Danger Music, the true story behind some of the most disgusting, scary, dangerous music ever made. So go to nebula.tv/Volksgeist to see that and countless other quality original content from movies, documentaries. It's the home of the best creators on the internet. More about that later. It's the 1995 Source Awards ceremony, and Outkast just won the award for the best new rap group, but everyone is booing them.
How you gonna get booed and you just won best new artist?
But it's like this though. I'm tired of folks, you know what I'm saying? Them closed-minded folks, you know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say.
While the event also saw animosity between the East and West Coast, who had a complete monopoly over rap at the time,
the East Coast ain't got no love for Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Y'all don't love us. Well, let it be known then. We know y'all East Coast.
There was one common enemy. No one wanted to recognize Outkast. They were outsiders from Atlanta. Their music was weird, their clothes were weird, and they weren't welcome. A lot of New York radio channels just refused to play their songs. But André was no stranger to rejection. He remembered how a few years ago he was rejected by the only person in the music industry who could possibly change his life. He had already been told that he would never make it, and that there was nothing unique about him, that he wasn't good and he wasn't a star. And so this moment wasn't much to be afraid of at all. Outkast was born from 3 different life paths meeting at one crossroads. Antoine Patton was born in the winter of 1975 in the small coastal town of Savannah, Georgia. He grew up in a 3-bedroom house crammed full of family members. Growing up poor made him pragmatic, entrepreneurial, and a natural-born leader. At the age of 8, he would throw parties where he would DJ a set at his house and charge kids to enter and have candy. As a teenager, he became a straight-A student while at the same time dealing drugs to make ends meet. Antoine eventually realized he had to leave his small town if he wanted to find real opportunities. He was able to convince his Aunt Renee to let him stay with her in Atlanta so he could attend the Tri-Cities High School for Performing Arts and learn more about music. And it was there in Atlanta that he met André Benjamin. André was only a few months younger and he grew up in the city. He was introverted and some people even thought he was a bit naive, always with his head in the clouds. At Tri-Cities High School, he quickly got into rapping with his classmates and found it was one of his true passions. At age 16, in school together, Antoine and André were rivals. Their personalities couldn't be more opposed, and that's why they respected each other's rapping skills. That's why the rivalry turned into friendship, and before long they formed a musical duo called 2 Shades Deep. Antoine was Black Dog, and André called himself Black Wolf. And yeah, if this were 2015 instead of 1991, that would have been a furry collective. Always looking for any way into the industry, they would soon meet Rico Wade. Rico, a little bit older and a little more experienced, was part of a production trio called Organized Noise with his friends Sleepy Brown and Ray Murray. Organized Noise had been getting some work with Atlanta labels like LaFace Records, but the artists they were working with weren't what they really wanted. They wanted something of their own.
Man, I wish we had 2 young dudes. I'm talking about like 2 fly high school cats to come. We'd be straight. As I said that, these 2 guys came walking over the hill.
We were like, well, what can y'all do?
They rapped over this song, man. I swear they rapped for about 10 minutes apiece with no breaks.
I was totally amazed. So I instantly was like, yo, I want to take y'all to the dungeon.
He took them to the Dungeon, a studio space he had built in his mom's basement, the same place that would go on to facilitate some of the greatest records in the history of Atlanta's rap scene, launching artists like Goody Mob, TLC, Janelle Monáe, Killer Mike, Future, and of course, Outkast. In 1992, it wasn't much more than a room full of cobwebs, rat shit, and empty walls with the paint coming off. And of course, artists pursuing the impossible dream from scratch. Again, though, they were only 16 and 17 years old. Antoine still managed to balance making music with good grades, but André completely dropped out. If music failed, he didn't know what he was going to do. That's how much time they were spending working on music in the dungeon. They had no other plan. If this group failed, they'd all be failures. No one would want anything to do with them. And that's how they became Outkast. André, previously known as Black Wolf, became Dre. Antoine, previously Black Dog, became Big Boi. And their shot at success came shortly after. Rico Wade, through doing production for LaFace Records, built a relationship with its president L.A. Reid. After a while, he managed to land an audition for Outkast. But Reid wasn't a fan.
Here's a person who could put you in position to be a professional rapper. And he tell you you're not good enough.
LaFace was an R&B and pop label with acts like Usher, TLC, and Tony Braxton. No rap act had ever been signed, and they weren't looking for one either. L.A. Reid was looking to sign more pop stars, and he felt like Outkast was a lot like every other rap group. They had good lyrics but no unique sound, and they didn't seem like future stars. Everyone was disappointed. André's spirit was broken. He didn't even have school to fall back on. But Big Boi told him, "We've come this far, so we might as well keep pushing." So they did. Back in the dungeon, Rico Wade started a relentless training regimen for Outkast. The production trio experimented to create a new sound, and André and Antoine did hundreds of rewrites to improve their raps. They even started performing their verses while running to build strong lung capacity for concerts. It was brutal work. They were treating being in a rap group like their lives depended on it. Eventually, though, they got a second chance to go back to L.A. Reid and do another audition, and in 1992, at the age of 17, Outkast became the first ever rap artists signed to LaFace Records. Just 2 years after Outkast met in high school, their 1994 debut album Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music sold 1 million records within a year, and of course won them the Best New Rap Group award at the 1995 Source Awards, all before they were 20 years old. So why again did people try and boo them off the stage? Because 3 years ago, they were rejected for being unoriginal, and now they're being hated for sounding too unique. So what kind of album did they make to get people so mad? They brought the new Dirty South sound to the scene. It combined live guitar, keyboard, and bass with the hard-hitting sampled hip-hop drums. It was funky with dark undertones, and it reflected the album's themes of pleasure and pain. The first half of the album is about the feeling, the hedonism, the excitement of living in Atlanta. Players Ball is a song about celebrating Christmas the Atlanta way, smoking, dealing drugs, and having a party.
I made it through another year, can't ask for nothing much more. It's Outkast for the books, I thought you knew, so now you know, let's go.
And if you think André 3000 looks young in this video, it's because he was. He was 17 years old. Funky Ride is a psychedelic funk overdose that makes you feel like you're floating on a hazy cloud. But then the second half of the album depicts the apathy, the hopelessness, and the self-destructive tendencies that make many teenagers give up on their futures and their education in a very conscious yet entertaining way. Like the song Call of the Wild, where André confides that he's scared for his future. Remember, he wasn't a famous rapper here. He was just a random kid who was risking his future for his passion for music.
And I wish it and I wonder, damn, will I graduate before I hit the summer? I think not. I'm differently trying to dig up in me. He say I'm haphazard, got no future, and so he sent me up the creek and shit, choking like hell without no paddle. But niggas is getting smart, we back on the saddle. No longer, y'all know y'all.
This album gave a huge voice to Southern hip-hop. The awards, the sales, introducing the rest of the country to the unique Atlanta accents, the production, the ideas, and the stories, but it also had a big effect on André in particular. In the months after its success, he went into a mental spiral and became almost unrecognizable to the people around him. To a lot of outsiders who were now interested in Outkast, not knowing who they were before, he looked pretty crazy. There were even rumors flying around that he might be on drugs, or gay, or both. One day, completely out of nowhere, André showed up to the studio wearing a turban. He told everyone that he had thrown away all of his jewelry, quit drinking and smoking, become vegan and spiritual, and had started a year-long vow of celibacy. Big Boi couldn't believe that the chain-smoking rapper who had taught him how to roll a blunt 2 years ago was now a sober vegan. The same guy who just a few weeks ago was partying with groupies was now celibate. André even started studying for a GED to make up for the fact that he dropped out of high school, despite the fact he was now a famous artist who had no need to go back to school ever. He had achieved every rapper's dream, and now he was openly throwing it all away on a whim, right after they had their big break. And the reason why was because André resented the vices that came with his newfound success. He found them distracting and stressful, and he didn't want to be that way anymore.
I exploited my fame, and then I got guilty about it and pulled back, looking in the mirror. They say, when you're high, you shouldn't look in the mirror, and I did. And I saw myself deteriorating, and I was like, you look terrible. You got to cut this shit out or you won't make it. And I stopped.
There was also the heartbreak and regret that came from the end of his 2-year relationship with the singer Keisha Spivey. She had dumped him, and it left him feeling pretty empty. But what he regretted most was that he apparently felt like a fraud, personally and artistically. André was going against his better instincts to become a hedonistic, materialistic, young 19-year-old rap star. Instead, he wanted to live more true to himself. Most of all, though, André didn't want to be a fake gangster rapper anymore. Because even though Outkast was introduced as a kind of weird, conscious, funky version of the regular rap sound, they were still abiding by the gangster look that was non-negotiable back then. Big Boi, he wasn't a stranger to that world. He had the aura of someone shaped by hardship. He was about that life. But André was a little different. He went to one of the most elite private schools in Atlanta. So does that mean that André 3000 was a rich kid pretending to have a poor, tragic origin story? Not really. It's pretty complicated, but one thing was for sure. He wasn't gonna act like someone he wasn't, just for the sake of being famous. Sharon Benjamin and her son André finally settled into the Bowen Homes housing project in Atlanta when he was a young kid. In the years before, they had been moving around constantly because she didn't have enough money to put down a deposit on an apartment for them to live in. When she left André's father, all she had to her name was $450 and a mattress. But what really broke her heart was to see her son André, who was only 10 years old, fully accept the instability and the feeling of not having a home. Each time she got evicted from a place, he would say, "I'm ready," as if he were already used to it. Living in the Bowen homes, she always worried when she looked out the window to see people fighting, dealing drugs, or police cars and fire engines pulling up to the building. Feeling determined to make sure that her son would have a good future, she took the first opportunity that came her way. She enrolled André in a school program that took kids from low-income areas and sent them to schools in affluent neighborhoods. Eventually, André ended up at a middle school in Buckhead in Atlanta, one of the nicest parts of the city. And this was a formative experience for him. These schools gave him access to top-tier education and infrastructure in a racially, economically mixed environment, which led to a unique taste in music he wouldn't have heard at home. He loved listening to Rakim, Madonna, Sting, and Duran Duran from a young age. Even before the prestigious schools, though, he had always been an unusually curious child who loved to tinker with his mom's record player, disassembling it and putting it back together, and this school experience only increased his curiosity. It was no surprise that in middle school he got into art, music, and fashion, and even developed his own style of dressing. But at the same time as his school experience expanded his tastes and his interests, he started to go through an identity crisis.
When he came back to the neighborhood, people around him was like, "What the hell you got on?"
Even after bouncing back, fixing her finances and home by becoming a real estate agent, André's mother still couldn't afford nice things like brand name clothes. At school, he would see unfamiliar bougie lifestyles, and then he'd come back home and realize how different his reality was. He slowly started to understand that things that were normal for his friends were out of reach for him. By the time André was in high school, the integration program was over, and pretty quickly he started to rebel. But smoking weed and drinking and petty troublemaking doesn't make you a pimp or a gangster. André was still the same exact eccentric, introverted, artistic kid with his head in the clouds, just with a few bad habits. And so it makes sense that with his early music, André tried to fit in with the conventional aesthetics and style. But the sad thing was that they still didn't want him, the same way the people from his neighborhood didn't want him. The only answer in that position would be to sink further and further into his daydreams and his eccentricities, because that was the only place he could safely be who he was. His whole life, he was too artistic, too expressive, and too colorful for the people around him. It was only with Big Boi and Rico Wade and making music in the dungeon that André came to find a sense of belonging. And so now the name Outkast starts to hit a little different. And while their debut album was pretty great, it didn't make him feel true to himself. This transformation he was now going through, becoming an unrecognizable figure, it was André's way of swearing that he would never compromise who he really is and how he feels and what he wants to do. It was him proving that he'd never lose himself just to gain clout in a world that isn't really true to him. But ironically, embracing that weirdness is what would soon make him bigger than he ever imagined, one of the biggest figures in the history of rap. Outkast's next 2 albums would change hip-hop forever. After the smooth yet edgy street sound of Southern playalistic Cadillac music, ATLiens starts like this.
You can be sure some go low to get high. You may hurt till you cry. You may die. Keep on trying till it's summer in the city. Till it's summer in the city.
After the thrill chasing and the youthful sound of the first album, ATLiens' themes are mature, looking at life as being bigger than your immediate wants and needs. André told Spin magazine, "You had themes around aliens, robots, the future, the spiritual world, introspection, sins and trauma and relationships with God, and the daily challenges of the present."
ATLiens album, not the Atlians album. It's called ATLiens for all y'all who be getting it wrong.
Aliens from Atlanta, foreigners in the world of the East and the West Coast hip-hop rivalries. The album combines musical elements ranging from gospel to R&B, reggae to even country and rock. André was really giving himself more to the music, not only focusing on lyrics but also becoming a producer himself. André handled production on 1/3 of the album's songs, which only added to the overall feeling of intense moodiness, sci-fi inspiration, and an atmosphere that's larger than life and intimate at the same time. But it's important to remember that both of them were just 21-year-old artists who had been outcasted by the mainstream community from the start. That kind of rejection can deeply trouble someone and make them confrontational. In reality, André caught most of the ridicule aimed at Outkast, but still, despite their polar opposite styles and personalities, Big Boi always stood by him.
Back then, there was a whole bunch of shit talking. People just couldn't understand how we were making the type of music we were making. There were a lot of attacks coming at my partner. We wanted to let people know this man doesn't stand by himself. I mean, that's my dog. It's a team effort.
In success and in ridicule, Outkast was known for their yin and yang contrast of the player and the poet. While André had a laid-back poetic delivery with eccentric artistry, Big Boi had the charisma, the fast flows, and he brought the Atlanta street culture to the mix.
Y'all two look so different in the video. You got more of a funkified, you know what I'm saying? Your dress and everything, you coming through, while you coming through more, you know what I'm saying, on a regular.
The next album was Aquemini. Big Boi the Aquarius and André the Gemini. Aquemini.
You got Big Boi the Aquarius, half of the group. And on this side, you got André 3000, the Gemini of the group. Y'all know what it is.
It took the experimental sounds of ATLiens to a new level, and it became the moment that ended the East-West Coast monopoly over hip-hop. André doubled down on his new direction of eccentricity and spirituality, while Big Boi kept things real and sharp. Juxtaposition became their superpower. Like in The Art of Storytelling Part 1, Big Boi talks about his encounters with a highly promiscuous girl, Susie Screw. But then André comes in with a story about a girl who had a bleak outlook on life and OD'd while being 6 months pregnant.
We on our back staring at the stars above, talking about what we gon' be when we grow up. I say what you wanna be, she said alive. It made me think for a minute, then looked in the eyes, I could've died.
In this album, André truly showed he could do it all. He could do conscious, insightful storytelling, but he could also do lyrical kill shots better than any other rapper alive.
Enough to buy an ounce, but not enough to bounce them kids to the jewel to the park, so they grow up in the dark, never seeing light, so they end up being like your sorry ass. Robbing niggas and broad ass, they like get down. Return of the gangsta, The niggas who get the wrong impression of expression, then the question is.
I was young and wilder, and some of my fashion choices people didn't accept at the time. I started getting flack from some people, so they were like, either he's gay or on drugs. With Big Boi standing by me, I knew I had to address some of the shit, because I can't have my homeboy looking bad. I knew a lot of people felt like Southern Playalistic was some of our hardest work, and they felt like we strayed from that. So Return of the Gangsta was trying to give them a sense of, hey, I'm still a regular person. At the end of the day, you've still got to go through the same neighborhood, so sometimes you have to say stuff to let people know what it is. I'm a man, so you can't say some of this stuff to me.
And of course, he became even more of the eccentric artist everyone knew. In fact, he went so hard on being unique that he started dressing in ski boots, monkey fur pants, and wigs. When Rico Wade asked him what he was doing, André told him that the music was colorful and beautiful, and he wanted to look like the music. And the music was pretty beautiful.
In your face, you're a superstar. Niggas hang around cause of who you are. You get a lot of love cause of what you got. Say they happy for you, but they really not. Sell a lot of records and you roll the bins. Fall up in the spot, now you're losing friends. All you wanna do is give the world your heart.
Aquemini was so good that the rest of the rap scene couldn't stay mad for long. It was thoughtful yet full of bangers. It was even more moody than ATLians, exploring topics like human nature, addiction, relationships, and again, all while blending sci-fi and urban narratives together. Aquemini went on to be ranked many times as one of the greatest albums ever made, at the very least one of the best rap albums of the 90s. Again, in large part due to how André 3000 was able to blend so many sounds together and bring such a free-thinking yet soberingly real spirit to the songwriting. He had become more strange than ever before, but it wasn't something that people could blame on drugs or addiction or strange beliefs. He was just a truly unique person, and him expressing that in his art made him more famous than ever before. In the song Millennium from ATLians, André said this about his state of mind. Life never lived up to my expectations, so I accept the patience. Expect the worst, but now I'm pacing back and forth. But at this point now, in the late 90s, life had started to get pretty good for André 3000. He was no longer a hated underdog in the rap world. People were really starting to recognize the impressive creative output from Outkast, with critics calling Aquemini a stroke of brilliance, cliche-defying, and the most lush hip-hop album ever. One critic said that Aquemini possesses an uncanny blend of sonic beauty, poignant lyricism, and spirituality that compels without commanding. To put it simply, they were no longer outcasts. Their strange brand of music had become so undeniably good, it was now the norm. On the personal side too, things were improving. After his 1-year vow of celibacy, André met Erykah Badu, a singer who was even more famous than he was at the time, but she followed a spiritual vegan lifestyle, just like him. A year after they got together, their son was born in November of 1997. A life started shaping up for André beyond being stuck in his own head. The birth of his son propelled him to further become his own person, even pushing him and Big Boi to find their own paths, literally. They had diverging paths because they started riding in separate tour buses, since André wanted his bus to be a no-smoking zone. But it wasn't all perfect. Pretty soon, André would find out that despite his spiritual awakening and strict monk-like lifestyle, he still couldn't completely avoid struggle and tragedy. After just 3 years together, he and Erykah Badu separated, which seemed to take a real toll on André. He became self-destructive and lost his sobriety in the years after the breakup. But André always said that to make great art, you have to take time and live a life worthy of making art about. So when your life is in pieces, where do you turn? Instead of sinking deeper into his thoughts like he had been for his whole life, André decided to chase even more success and become the sound of 1999. Feeling inspired by the dawn of a new era, André submerged himself in the artistic process completely, even choosing a new stage name, officially going by André 3000 for the first time instead of just Dre. On the one hand, to distinguish himself from Dr. Dre, but also to make one thing clear. The new millennium was right around the corner, but André wasn't from this one. He was so far ahead that he was from the next one, the year 3000. But at a certain point, André's artistic direction even started to worry Big Boi, specifically when he would say that he was tired of rapping, instead wanting to sing pop songs. The more time went on, the more he chased his ideas, the more people felt that André was disconnected from reality. So in hindsight, you can start to see why their next album, while possibly the most iconic thing they ever made, was the last project they ever made together. In André's own words, Stankonia is the place I imagined where you can open yourself up and be free to express anything. For him, it was tales of sex, politics, street violence, and his own personal struggles.
Some days you wake up on one side of the bed and all you want to do is party. And some days you got something to say. So we put them both together.
Miss Jackson is the most popular song from Stankonia. It's one of the best songs Outkast ever made, period, being ranked on many lists over the years as one of the greatest tracks ever. It even won a Grammy. And in this glitchy synth-pop meets 70s soul meets rap song, André speaks directly to the mother of his ex, apologizing for all the pain she went through from the turmoil of their relationship. Miss Jackson is a truly huge song that has billions of streams even to this day, 25 years after it came out, and it became a huge cult classic.
Sorry, Miss Jackson. Ooh, I am for real. Never meant to make your daughter cry. I apologize a trillion times. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson.
The story goes that Erykah Badu's own mom loved the song and was always proud of it, even though it was about her own daughter's heartbreak. Then there was the most controversial and innovative song from the album, Bombs Over Baghdad. André was annoyed that rap sounded so relaxed at the time.
Everybody was getting paid, so it wasn't as hungry. We wanted that song to sound fierce and urgent.
What's hilarious is that this song's name was so controversial that multiple radio stations banned it completely, which stopped it from being a successful lead single. But the song itself had no reference to Iraq's invasion or any military conflict at all.
Jump in jail, you load the dig, I might just touch hell. Hot, get a life, now they on sale. Then I might catch you a spell. Look at what came in the mail. I'm scared of some arm and hammer. So road grill and a baby mama. Black hair lack in the back of pampers. Stack of questions with no answers. Cure for cancer, cure for AIDS. Make a nigga wanna stay on tour for days. Get back home, things are wrong. When not really, it was bad all along. Before you left ass up to a ball of power. Thoughts at 1,000 miles per hour. Hello, ghetto.
It was actually a psychedelic, bass-pounding track about life in the ghetto that somehow became an anthem for the Iraq War later on.
This news reporter, she said something, and bombs over Baghdad. It sounded good. I knew I could use it somewhere.
In his verse on the song Red Velvet, you can hear the way that this song crucially influenced Kendrick Lamar later down the line. And on here, André even uses the chipmunk voice that many years later, Frank Ocean and Tyler, the Creator, would take inspiration from as well. Stankonia pushed Outkast to pop star levels of fame. It went gold within a week, and it even won the Grammy for Best Rap Album of the Year. From the outside, Outkast were on top of the world, but beneath the surface, André and Big Boi had started drifting apart. It wasn't out of conflict, they were always different people, but more so their separate pace of life taking them in different creative directions. André was getting more and more unusual, wearing dresses, colorful outfits, long bright wigs, and singing pop songs. Big Boi, he was an elite rapper, one of the best, but he wasn't following André down the same path of experimentation and strangeness. Instead, he stayed a lot more grounded in his writing and his persona, and no one ever asked if Big Boi was gay or on drugs. He was a more traditional artist. André was also behaving more strangely than ever before. He expressed a hatred for performing live, but then forced himself to do it anyway. He started withdrawing more to himself, mostly spending his time alone. At first, it could be dismissed as André being more devoted to the craft of music, as he'd started taking more serious lessons on learning instruments and music theory, with Michael Jackson's guitarist being his personal music teacher. But in hindsight, you get a sense that through his music, André was really crying out for help. In the energetic song Gasoline Dreams, he says this.
All of my heroes did know. Every nigga around me playing married. I'm paying child support. I can't cold. Never made no sense to me. One day I hope it will, and that's that. Sports ball. Pray I live to see the day when Sarah's happily married with kids.
It's eerie how the lyric might just pass by with the fast delivery and the energetic anthem sound, hiding the true feeling of his words. What he was really saying underneath the happy sound was that his inability to manage romantic bonds or relationships in general was making him feel confused and empty despite the success he was enjoying at the same time. Ultimately, André dived further into his music, and he started working on a solo project called The Love Below, an album about the highs and the lows of love. He was making it because he needed emotional release in a dark moment of his life. It wasn't meant to be a hit. It wasn't meant to change the game. But at the same time, The Love Below ended up becoming the best-selling hip-hop album ever. The Love Below was made to be a solo album by André 3000. But at the last minute, his record label told him that this wasn't a good business move. Outkast at the moment was too popular for André to go off on his own, and they needed to keep riding the momentum from Stankonia. So Big Boi was roped in to do another half of the project and make it a double album. But creative issues came up again when André started taking an excruciatingly long time to actually finish the project. Instead of being someone who could freestyle or put music out like a workhorse, he's often said that he can't force his art. It either feels natural and comes out, or he doesn't make it. But even by his own standards, The Love Below was very slow. He later told GQ in 2017 that a lot of people don't know The Love Below almost wasn't finished. When it was finally finished, it became very obvious that Speakerboxx / The Love Below is two separate albums put together. You can see it in the name, the album cover, and even the track listing. Big Boi's Speakerboxx is a progressive version of their signature funky southern hip-hop sound. Listening to it, you can feel how much Big Boi has grown throughout his journey, covering topics like parenthood, religion, politics, marriage. On the other hand, André's The Love Below sounds alien to anything he's ever created. It's not an exaggeration. There's only one song on this album that's actually hip-hop. Everything else feels like gothic horror.
I wait my whole life to bite the right one. Then you come along and that freaks me out. So I'm frightened. Ooh, Dracula's one never ran from no one, but I'm terrified of you.
Vintage jazz.
I need somebody to love before it's too late. It's too late.
Sounding like the Beatles with soft rock.
My baby don't mess around because she loves me so, and this I know for sure. But does she really want
Or psychedelic soul.
today for a reason? I think I'm on the right track now.
And listening to it, you can understand why this album took so long to make. André has always been the sole writer of his songs, but on The Love Below, he was also the main producer and played a lot of the instruments himself. This isn't just an album, it's a tapestry of André's full creative abilities. So it's really not shocking to find out that the album starts like this.
Who knows where this flower grows?
You can't tell me that this song doesn't sound like the direct inspiration for Tyler the Creator's Flower Boy album. Even beyond the same sound, look at the phrase, "where this flower grows." Tyler literally has a track in his album called Where This Flower Blooms. André was way ahead of his time. Going even further in this unexpected direction, André brought in Norah Jones for the song Take Off Your Cool, which is a really easy listening, smooth sound people still listen to today, with Norah Jones going through a career renaissance in 2024 thanks to TikTok trends.
Baby, take off your cool. I wanna see you. I wanna see you. Baby, don't be so cool.
But the biggest song from this album, and possibly the biggest song of Outkast's entire career, was Hey Ya. A couple of minutes ago, I was talking about how André's cries for help in his music often hide in plain sight under happy instrumentals. In Hey Ya, he's really not even trying to hide it.
Together, but separate songs is better when there's feelings involved. If what they say is nothing is forever, then what makes love the exception? So why are we so in denial when we know we're not happy here? Y'all don't wanna hear me, you just wanna dance.
The song is upbeat, it's happy and poppy, but the lyrics are about deep isolation and André's feeling that love is always destined to fail. It's pretty dark to realize that this is the song that's become so widely used in wedding parties and graduations and proms, and then thinking about André going out and performing this song at shows for oblivious dancing fans. It's definitely one of those songs where the real meaning isn't at all how people interpret it to be. And Speakerboxx / The Love Below ended up winning the Grammy for Best Album, and it turned André 3000 into possibly the most famous artist in America at that moment. But we're still only halfway through the story. Outkast became the kings of the music industry. At the 2004 Grammys, immediately after winning the Album of the Year award, André and Big Boi shared a long hug. They had made history with their 10-year journey that started by being booed off the stage and laughed at back when they won the award for Best New Rap Group back in 1995. And they're only 29 years old, but they achieved everything they could have imagined. Thinking back to when André was worried about not graduating from high school and having no future, and then after that dealing with being sidelined by the other rap scenes, and then even being considered the weird, artsy rapper that people love to judge, finally, he had it all. So it doesn't make a lot of sense why, a year later on his 30th birthday, André 3000 was hiding away in a hotel all alone. He didn't celebrate his 30th birthday. He didn't see anyone. It could have been a moment to celebrate the decade of hard work and the incredible success, but instead, he turned away from the world completely. And then, a year after that, he officially said he was done with music. And André's new mindset didn't just hurt him, it also started to have major consequences for Big Boi and the group itself. In 2004, Outkast were invited to perform at the Super Bowl halftime show, arguably the biggest honor any American artist can receive. But André didn't want to perform short versions of their songs the way they were required to make the set list manageable. He was aggravated and he said he was either going to perform full songs or not go at all. Big Boi tried to convince André not to throw away such a huge opportunity, but André refused and they didn't perform. André also canceled the concert tour that was supposed to support the huge success of the Speakerboxx Love Below album. Because of André's sudden unease with being around too many people and not wanting to do live performances, Big Boi also lost out on millions and millions of dollars of tour revenue.
This is unheard of. An MC that doesn't want to be on stage, that's almost blasphemy, right. According to the rules, What is it that happened inside of you when you decided, you know what, I gotta really put this aside?
After, if you've been doing it for years, it's kind of like my personality. I kind of have to be excited about something, really excited and passionate about it. And after you've been doing it for years, and it's been times right before I made the decision, we were on tour with Lauryn Hill, and there's been days where you be on stage and you're not even there. You've been doing it so long that you know all your stuff so much. It's kind of like you're thinking your head is in a whole nother world. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, let me take a break from this, and that's basically what it is.
But not to say that one day y'all may not come.
Oh yeah. Never say never.
And after a final album in 2006, which was not so much an Outkast album as a movie soundtrack, Outkast disbanded for good, silently. There was no announcement of a breakup. They just stopped making music. Big Boi never insisted that Outkast was done for good though. Years down the line, he would mention in interviews that he never even brought it up with André because he felt André wasn't exactly the same person anymore. They pretty much just parted ways without a word. So what happened? Superficially, we all know. André withdraws from the public eye, but he turns up here and there, from acting in a few movies to launching a failed fashion brand to being a mythical creature that walks around airports and cities playing the flute by himself, even becoming one of the most legendary guest rappers of the last 10 years on other people's songs. He was always around, and he never let go of creating, even if he never released his own music again. From 2005 to 2023, we've all heard the many André 3000 features on songs by artists like Frank Ocean, Drake, Future, James Blake, and many more. He has stayed a very active rapper without releasing his own projects, and a lot of people have been introduced to him just through his guest verses. So people weren't exactly shocked that André did finally announce a solo album in 2023, almost 15 years since his last release. But what was shocking was that it wasn't hip-hop. It actually didn't have any vocals at all. It was an instrumental flute album with experimental vibes. And when he got asked why it wasn't rap, one of the most loved, influential, respected rappers alive said, "I can't make a rap album." People were confused, with some of his post-Outkast features even standing among his best work, keeping his legacy alive for so long. Why would he say he's not able to make a rap album? Getting old and losing his creative spark was always André's biggest fear. To become uncool and lose what made him special seemed horrifying. So instead of facing that future, he just walked away from it all at the peak of his fame. His decision to not make his own music but still collaborate with the new generation makes a lot of sense. He gets to be active, but in a way where he knows he won't fall off in the process. From the days of Stankonia, where he co-signed a young Dungeon Family protege by the name of Killer Mike, to hanging out with a young Eminem, or even forging friendships and songs with Future, Frank Ocean, Tyler the Creator, Drake, Kanye, Anderson .Paak, and more artists who popped off after he did, some of the best work of his career has come from his work with other people. Songs like Pink Matter from Channel Orange or Life of the Party from Donda. Andre's modern verses are amazing. So if he didn't want to drop a rap album, which makes sense, why did he drop a flute album out of every possible genre? And why does he live such a monk-like lifestyle of not doing live shows, avoiding people, and isolating himself? Well, the truth is, even if Andre didn't want to fall off as a rapper and he managed to save himself from that, he still has another problem as an artist and a person, and that is the poison of fame.
Especially in success, there's all this emotion that no one teaches us how to deal with.
No.
Even people that you know for a long time start acting different to you.
Yes, and you start acting different because they start acting different.
It's weird.
It's a bad thing.
The whole thing's unnatural. No one teaches you how to deal with it, and it's a crazy making process.
Yes.
So people do stuff to try to just numb that pain.
Oh yeah. That the more success that you have, you become more and more isolated.
Yeah.
You spend more times in hotels.
Yeah.
You spend less time around people.
Yes.
And your writing kind of goes to shit too.
Yeah.
Andre always considered fame to be unnatural. To have that much attention on you, so much praise and so many expectations, it not only affects an artist's ability to create, it also affects their humanity. Andre describes it through the story of a blues artist who gets successful, rich, and famous, but then has to hire a woman to break his heart so he could write real blues music again. What he's trying to say is that becoming famous can ruin the passion that made you relatable in the first place. Oftentimes, Andre would visit clubs and watch unknown artists perform because he loved to see the hunger and the passion in their work. It made him feel human again. They were fighting to be known without any promise of success, and they had a lot to lose, but they still fought to create music because they loved it. And as Andre knew firsthand, fame caused a lot of damage. For him in 2014, when it got to a point that he started feeling terrified of meeting new people, he finally went to a psychiatrist to find out why he'd been having these troubles throughout his career. It was only then that he was finally diagnosed with social anxiety and hypersensitivity disorder, two mental disorders that are known to make functioning in daily life very difficult, let alone when you add in the insane pressures of fame. But playing the flute turned out to have a strong calming effect for Andre. It became the most effective coping mechanism for his struggles. That's why it was the Flute album that felt so special to him, and it ended up being his first ever solo project. It wasn't a gimmick. It was actually really important to him, and it represented a lot of healing and introspection he had done over a period of nearly 20 years. It's the same reason why one of the only ways to keep up with what Andre 3000 has been doing for 2 decades is seeing random videos of him playing the flute in different cities, because he just loves how the act of playing in public removes his ego as a performer. He isn't a star that everyone's drooling at, he's just in many ways a nameless figure playing the flute to entertain strangers. No pressure, no toxicity, just the joy of creativity and performance. In 2019, this is what he said.
I don't even know what I am, and maybe I'm nothing. Maybe I'm not supposed to be anything. Maybe, my history is kind of handicapping in a way.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to find out what makes me feel the best right now.
Yes.
And what makes me feel the best is when I just do these random kind of instrumental kind of thing.
Because in his middle age, with no persona, no work pressure, no rigid spiritual codes to hide behind, Andre had to eventually face his childhood experiences and unresolved trauma, the very stuff that had been bothering him ever since he became famous, especially the effects of a secret that his mother told him only once he was in his 30s. His relationships with his parents and their deaths, these things became more unavoidable when he realized that a lot of his troubles, from his failed romantic relationships to his social anxiety, were a product of his childhood. The end result of Andre 3000's reckoning with himself was a beautiful song, possibly the most beautiful he's made since the end of Outkast, better than his Flute album, better than his features, and that was Life of the Party with Kanye for Donda. We know that Andre 3000's parents were never married and his birth was unplanned. But what we didn't know, and what he didn't know, was that the reason his mother stopped living in the same apartment as his father was because one day he showed up with a new woman he was dating, and he told her, "The only reason I'm with you is for the baby." She chose to leave on the spot to protect her dignity. Even though it meant going through homelessness and poverty, she started working tirelessly to give Andre opportunities. And it was only once Andre turned 35 that she would tell him what that cost had been for her.
My mom was everything. I grew up a mama's boy completely. When I was small, she was like a dictator. I understand it now, but she still went hard. And then one day, I was 23 or 24, I caught her face in such a way that I thought, oh wow, that's mom. It's like that moment where she's not just this person that took care of you. When I was around 35, my mom pulled me to the side in the kitchen. Out of nowhere, she was like, you know, when you were 5, I used to go and do crack. She was like, it was new during that time. I was dating this drug dealer guy, and he sold cocaine, and we would do cocaine, and that was like a normal thing. And she said, me and that guy broke up, and I had to find something to get high, and there was this new thing called crack. So she tried it, and there it was. She's married to a preacher, and she's always in the church, and she's this helpful person in the community. So she was strong enough to break that and change over.
André learned a lot about hope and resilience from his mother, of course, but he also started figuring out why he was so afraid of aging, to the extent of hiding in a hotel on his 30th birthday, away from everybody he knew. Unresolved pain from your childhood, made worse by success from a young age, left him too fragile for fame.
They say that if you're an entertainer, whatever time you took off, you stay that age. I was 17. You got to understand, I've only written one check in my life. When I was 17, they still had checkbooks. And my mom taught me how to write a check and do my balance. And then Outkast took off.
Even when he tried to grow past his childhood and start a family of his own, a clean slate still wasn't possible. Because André reconnected with his father and he realized he wasn't an evil man. He was just another regular guy, afraid of aging, afraid of intimacy, and with a big fear of abandonment. His dad was probably also part of a cycle that started long before him. But most importantly, André started to realize he was the same way.
I don't know. I don't think so. He had all these troubles the last few years. He had to get his heart valve replaced and prostate cancer and colon cancer. But I think we made amends, and that was a cool thing. I do miss not being able to talk to him about him living alone and not ever being married. I think I would have gotten a lot of great insight. I think he would have told me something. Growing up, I would always see these great women. But for some reason, he kept not making it happen, and that's always happened with me. So I know my kid sees me the same way.
After the death of both of his parents, and with his own son going off to college, André 3000 found himself at times feeling like he didn't have much to live for. Even until 2020, he said that his life often felt like a treadmill of silent dread.
I'm a pessimist. I always think of the worst. I'm always thinking of death in some way. In recent years, my parents and my stepdad passed away, so it's been a little bit of funeral fatigue. This is reality now. The older we get, the more funerals we're going to. I'm 45 right now as I'm giving this answer, and I have had to start thinking of things I never had to think about before. I never planned on being an adult. Sometimes I'm looking around and I'm like, damn, I have to be an adult.
But then one day, Kanye West called him at just the right moment to create something amazing. And what we got is, in my opinion, not just some of the best songwriting I've ever heard, but also a career-defining moment for André 3000, where his past and present meet in a truly transcendent way.
Mr. Andre, you run and tell my mama, please tell her I said say something. I'm starting to believe ain't no such thing as heaven's trumpets. No after over, this is it done. If there's a heaven, you would think they let you speak to your son. Maybe she has in the form of a baby's laugh I heard passing by in a stroller, reminding me, hey, keep rolling on, no. Maybe she has with the prick of a blade of grass I've been laying on way too long. Got me itchy, got up and roamed a little more. Mr. Andre, you see my father, please ask him why. He never married, always smiled, but was he happy inside? Because I carried my mother's name, did he carry shame with him? I'm sure she did it out of spite, was her decision at birth. She probably would hurt. Poor baby, two young people with different views, a lot for a young lady. No coincidence, they both passed away from heart conditions. There's a dissidence.
In 2024, we now see André 3000 flourishing, in many ways because he finally accepted that fame just wasn't a good fit for him. He became such a great, influential artist that achieved big success, but it cost him a lot and brought a lot of his old wounds up to the surface again. It makes sense that he had to withdraw to protect himself, as many artists do. But now he's managed to overcome a lot of his struggles. As recently as June of 2024, he's on tour with his Flute album. He's no longer terrified of live shows, no longer terrified of being around people, and he's exploring art in his own way. Even if people are confused as to why he doesn't want to make rap music, he's making what he wants to make, and he has more than enough fans who are ready to appreciate it. Ultimately, he managed to achieve everything with his career, having some of the best-selling rap albums ever, leaving behind a perfect discography that people love and still talk about 25 years later, being in demand as a rap artist into his 40s and 50s when most of his peers fell off a long time ago. He has a pretty insane legacy. One of the only rappers to go diamond, 4 perfect albums, a small pile of Grammys, and still loved to this day. But after knowing his story, the last thing that anyone should care about is whether Outkast or André on his own would ever drop one more album. Going through so much criticism, hiding from the outside world, going on hiatus for years and years while also breaking records and hugely influencing an entire genre, André 3000 is the definition of an artistic soul, and it's a miracle he still shows up at all, with all the pressure from the outside world to fit into a mold that just wasn't right for him. And that's what makes him one of the greatest artists ever. Being criticized and loved at the same time is what makes you truly unique. Having conflict with the system and realizing it's not made for you and the size and scope of your vision is what makes you a trendsetter that won't ever be forgotten. And ultimately, I think we all have a little André 3000 inside of us. Pushing yourself to fit into the mold of success and popularity is stressful, and we all have to do it at school, at work, or even when making art. I don't blame André for just throwing in the towel and walking around playing his flute in different cities and only dropping rap verses when he feels like it. Truly being yourself and saying what you want to say comes with a cost. One of the projects I really struggled to make for YouTube was Danger Music. It's a documentary I made about the history of violent music with all of the raw footage included, talking about bands that committed murder and burned down buildings over their music, performers that hurt the audience or destroyed the concert venue or threw poop at their fans as part of the show. I think it might be obvious why ultimately it's not on YouTube, because it just isn't a YouTube video. Danger Music is a Nebula original, funded by and exclusively available on Nebula because of their mission to be the best place for creators to make work that we couldn't make anywhere else. They gave me the resources to make the best documentary I possibly could, and I think it turned out really great. Nebula is a platform I own and co-founded with other creators as a place where we can elevate ourselves to a level beyond what we were previously capable of. We've come together to create our own platform, and it's quickly becoming the most interesting, fastest growing independent video platform anywhere. It's not our safe haven, it's not a place to hide from the rules, it's a place to grow and blossom into something completely different. Nebula has produced originals like Lindsay Ellis's Ballad of John and Yoko, which dives deep into the unintended consequences of the murder of John Lennon. It's a beautiful documentary exploring one of the strangest stories in modern music history. And they have even more interesting shows like the in-depth geopolitics show Modern Conflicts or Jet Lag, which is a travel game show where the players use the literal real world as their sandbox. It's a unique concept which is exciting and wouldn't be possible without Nebula. We're even producing movies this year. One of them is Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend. It's coming out in a few months and it got covered in Variety, one of the most popular entertainment magazines in the world. So Nebula is becoming the answer to the question, how do you make art or content that's as high quality and interesting as traditional media without the corruption and exploitation associated with that industry? I've always wanted to take my videos to the next level and make them more substantiated and more interesting than ever before, and Nebula is enabling that for our entire list of creators. Better stories, better production value, taking creators to the next level is what Nebula is all about, and it's only getting better as time goes on. So if you want to join a platform that's pushing entertainment forward, enabling us to make things we never could have made before, you can get access to exclusives like my Danger Music documentary and high-quality, thoughtful videos from hundreds of other creators like Adam Neely, Todd in the Shadows, Polyphonic, FD Signifier, Bobby Broccoli, and countless other storytellers. You should join Nebula today. So go check out my show Danger Music or Jet Lag or The Ballad of John and Yoko by going to nebula.tv/Volksgeist to get 40% off, because Nebula is only $30 per year when you use my code. Not only is it the most interesting video platform anywhere, it's also affordable. I even have a Nebula exclusive class breaking down my entire video production process from writing to graphics and more, which I think a lot of you would enjoy as well. It's not just any project, it's my project, and it's a project you don't want to miss out on.